无疑是今年 CES 展会上最大的亮点。在正在进行的 CES 2024国际消费电子展上，著名的 AI 科学家吴恩达和李飞飞出席了伟大的思想、大胆的愿景环节的小组讨论，就人工智能的下一步是什么，进行了40分钟的对谈。吴恩达是 Google Brain 的创始人，斯坦福大学副教授，也曾是 OpenAI 首席执行官山姆·奥特曼3 Moulton 的老师。李飞飞是斯坦福大学 Human Centered AI 研究所联合主任，谷歌云 Google Cloud 前人工智能机器学习首席科学家。对谈的总结点有以下核心点：一，两人一致认为2024将会是 AI 技术继续深化的一年，同时也会覆盖到更多行业，成为下一次数字革命或工业革命真正的变革性驱动力。二，吴恩达还预测了2024年 AI 可能的突破性进展，包括大视觉模型和边缘 AI 对于自主代理 agent 是否会出现的问题，两人出现了一定的分歧。李飞飞认为相对于自主代理而言，辅助代理可能更恰当。三，但两位专家都确认，这次由大模型引发的 AI 浪潮并不会像7年前那波 AI 热潮一样热闹，几年后进入冰河期。我们最后附上对谈视频，大家可以仔细看。
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Awesome. My name is Rajiv Chand. I'm head of research of Wing. It is my honor to be the moderator for this session on great minds in AI. We are here with two of the greatest minds in AI. Immediately to my left is professor of Stanford University, co-director of the Stanford Human Centered AI Institute, and also widely recognized as the grandmother of artificial intelligence, Fei-Fei Li, not to indicate anything about age. Not anything. And immediately to her left is managing general partner of AI Fund, also the founding lead for Google Brain, Andrew Ng. Everybody, please join me again in welcoming Fei-Fei Li and Andrew Ng to CES. Fei-Fei is also the author of this amazing book called The Worlds I See. If you haven't picked up a copy, I certainly recommend it. It's got this amazing life story as well as the history and future for AI. It's an amazing, amazing book. So,
actually, just to add to that, I think over the years I've known Fei-Fei, I and many others have been inspired by her personal story. She used to work in a laundromat. I think she's been public about that. And then she wound up more recently building up HAI. And frankly, you know, her whole team knows she has a reputation for working crazily hard and built HAI to this fantastic institution at Stanford. So I think for the people that don't know her story yet, I think if you read her book, you find it pretty inspiring. So.
Thank you, Andrew. This is why you're in the book.
So, Andrew and Fei-Fei, let's start with both of you are each luminaries and veterans of AI, but each of you have also worked. When's the first time both of you met each other or worked together? Tell us a little about your history.
I'm worried we might have different answers. Yeah. I think, well, first of all, I've been reading Andrew's papers before I met Andrew. I think we met as young assistant professors somewhere around 2007 in a conference or a workshop. That was my memory.
What year was that again?
2007.
2007.
Yeah, honestly, my memory is awful. I have no idea.
But you should remember that the first thing you said to me is, Fei-Fei, do you want a job at Stanford? That I remembered. No.
And that works out. I'm actually really proud, you know, that I played a small role in convincing Fei-Fei to come to Stanford. So it's been...
Well, let's start with question one, which is kind of state of AI. And last year was certainly a very hype year for AI. Our good friend Rodney Brooks tweeted or posted on January 1st, "Get your thick coats now. There may be yet another AI winter just around the corner, and it's going to be cold." So are we headed to less hype, more hype, or a trough for this upcoming year in AI?
I think the media will do whatever the media does, but we're not in for a winter. And that's because the business fundamentals of AI are stronger than ever. Even before the generative AI wave that really took off last year, AI has been moving probably hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars, I'm not sure, at least hundreds of billions of dollars. For a single company like Google, showing more relevant ads, that drives massive amounts of revenue. So the business fundamentals are there. And in fact, because AI, one of the difficult things to understand about AI is it's a general purpose technology, meaning that it's not useful for one thing. It's kind of like electricity, another general purpose technology. If I ask you what is electricity good for, it's almost hard to answer that because it's useful for so many different things. And AI is like that too. And so where we are today, I think even if AI makes no technological progress, which it is going to make tech progress, even if it doesn't, there's so many use cases all around the world to be identified and built out that the business fundamentals, I'm very confident, will continue to grow.
And we're going to make this session also highly interactive as well. Let me get a show of hands. More hype, less hype, winter. How many folks think that we are not at peak hype, there will be more hype this year? Show of hands. How many folks think there will be less hype this upcoming year? How many folks think no hands for less hype? How many folks think that will be a winter for this upcoming year? Wow. So we're not at peak hype.
Yeah, so I more or less agree with Andrew. So what we have seen is another inflection point of AI. And that inflection point came through the large language models or the first rollout of ChatGPT and then the ensuing models. What I do see, and I agree with Andrew, is this is a deepened horizontal technology. When it's a deepened horizontal technology, it is becoming a true transformative driving force of the next, whether you call it digital revolution or industrial revolution. In terms of the public media, coverage, it's gonna just go in this kind of waves, and that's not very relevant. But what is relevant is that this technology is here to stay, is here to be deepening into all vertical businesses and consumer experiences, and is changing the very fabric of our societal, economical, political landscape. And that is just a fact, and that's happening more and more.
Let's jump to big breakthroughs that you anticipate for 2024. Climate Hugging Face had, I think, 6 predictions for this upcoming year, one of which was big breakthroughs in AI for video time series, biology, and chemistry. What do you feel, maybe start with you, Fei-Fei, what do you feel will be one of the biggest breakthroughs in AI in this upcoming year as we start 2024?
It's always very dangerous to predict the future because then I'm going to be quoted as saying something wrong.
Or right.
Coming from the field of computer vision and what I would call pixel-centric AI, I do think we're at the verge of very exciting technological advances in pixel space. We've been looking at Gen AI, we've been looking at diffusion models. Some of you hear about Gaussian splatting, you hear about, I think there is just so much that's almost, breaking through that wave of technology. I don't know if it's exactly going to be as matured as LLM or large language models a year and a few months ago, but I'm seeing that more and more, and I'm very, very excited by that.
Image, video, multimodal with a combination of different modes, or any of the 3? Or
Right, it's a combination of those. It's going to be more pixel first. It's not just language induced. And another thing I do want to say is this is a little bit more Fei-Fei's hope rather than my prediction, is actually public sector AI. I think it's really important that for the ecosystem, as well as for many reasons, that public sector AI will be better resourced. We are pushing our governments for that, as well as some of the very exciting, interesting, multidisciplinary, non-profit-driven breakthroughs coming from public sectors, whether it's sustainability or medicine, drug discovery, and other areas.
Andrew, your thoughts?
Yeah, make a few quick predictions. So first, we've seen the large language model breakthrough, right? Things like ChatGPT and Bot. I agree with Fei-Fei about images coming. So I'm seeing a shift from large language models to large vision models. A lot of the progress will not just be in generating images, it will be in analyzing images so computers can see much better. There's implications on, self-driving cars, for example, wherever you have a camera. That's one. Second, we're used to prompting ChatGPT or Bard, you prompted a response, but I'm excited about the rise of autonomous agents, which is when you can give a AI system an instruction like, dear AI system, do market research for me to do a competitive analysis of this company. And instead of responding right away, it plans out a sequence of actions like do these web searches and download these web pages and summarize these things. And it goes off and does half an hour of work or an hour of work or a day of work, and then comes back to me with an answer. Autonomous agents, they can plan out and execute sequences of actions. They're kind of just barely working, but I feel like there's a lot of traction in the research and the commercialization side, and I'm expecting breakthroughs in the coming months. And maybe just one last thing, maybe appropriate for CS as well. I'm very excited about edge AI. I routinely run a large language model on my laptop, right? So I use GPT-4 all the time. I use Bard quite often. But what not many people know is that it's actually getting quite feasible to run a large language model on your laptop. Not as big as GPT-4, but big enough to be useful. And I think this will actually have a lot of implications. Device makers, all the PC makers, won't we like to be able to sell consumers a more powerful PC to let them power the latest AI? I think graphics cards was often a reason for upgrade. I think that edge AI running on your laptop or PC or your industrial PC at the edge, that capability is actually getting much better than most people think. And maybe appropriate for CS, I think this will drive a lot of device sales for a lot of companies as well.
I'm going to respectfully disagree on, or just tiny bit of a discussion. You use the word autonomous agent. I actually would like to change the A word to assistive agent. One thing we have seen in today's language model, large language models and these large foundation models, is that long tail distribution is still really, really hard, whether we're talking about hallucination and other things. And in a lot of workspace that in order to deliver the kind of quality service and products, long tail matters. So what I actually see is a human machine in the loop collaboration, assistive agents, that part of the work is autonomous, part of the work is collaborative, is more likely to happen rather than fully autonomous.
Actually, high five you. We finally had something to disagree on. But I actually do kind of agree. Let me share my experience. I think the term autonomous agents is problematic maybe, but what I'm seeing in business context is I know that a lot of us would rather, have AI help humans rather than replace humans because of the job loss conversation, which is a thing. And without diminishing the suffering of people whose jobs do go away, what I see, just to be completely candid, is often the decision for whether to use AI to automate or to augment, it tends to be a business economic decision rather than an ethical decision. Maybe it should be an ethical decision, but candidly, when I work with businesses and they build a chatbot, there's a very rational economic calculation that I see most businesses do to say, great, humans add this value, AI adds this value, what's the right economic decision? Because the competitors are doing the same thing. So I wish we could say, don't replace human tasks, but unfortunately.
Okay.
So on this topic of AI agents, let me say another quote from Mira Murati. She said, the concept of AI agents, this might have been November or so, the concept of AI agents isn't new, but now we're iterating towards the future with intelligent, common sense agents that understand why we do things.
Okay, this just to add to one thing, and I'll comment on that. One is that I think we have to be careful about replacing jobs versus replacing tasks.
Actually, that was perfect. I was going to say that next, but go for it.
Exactly. So I'm sure you and I read the same reports that for every given human job, it's actually a suite of multiple tasks. Sometimes for, I study healthcare a lot. A nurse 8-hour shift is hundreds of tasks. So I do see that AI agents helping and being assistive and augmentative on many tasks, but we should be very, very, very careful in talking about jobs. And I do think that economical business decisions are not mutually exclusive from ethical societal decisions. It's a deeper conversation.
I agree with that
know
too.
you and I agree. Coming to your question about these agents have an understanding, I think that this is a very nuanced term. Just focusing on the business, what is understanding? There's the understanding of the pattern that lives in the data. There's the understanding of what decisions you're making. There's also understanding of the intention of the whatever the human task. So I think it is actually. I would not go as far as using a blanket word understanding to describe today's AI agents or
Which of
AI
those three do you
programs.
think AI agents will get to in what time frame?
Well, I think the best we've gotten is understanding the patterns in the data. Especially if we have massive training data, we have done a great job. When I say we, for example, large language models, right, using this sequence-to-sequence transformer-based algorithm is really done a great job extracting the patterns in the data in order to create powerful predictive models. And so I think that's really probably the most ahead. In terms of understanding the decision making, again, I think that's much more nuanced. You guys all come from business, and you know how nuanced it is. And I think there's more to be done and to be said. And in terms of intention, I think we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, actually, I want to go back to the task topic because I think that's important. So one thing that my team's worked with quite a few businesses, and occasionally I get a call from a CEO. They say, "Hey, Andrew, reading about AI, generative AI, what should I do about it?" And it turns out that there's a recipe for businesses to figure out what tasks you should try to use AI to augment or automate. So as Fei-Fei was saying, most jobs are made up of many different tasks. Take the job of a radiologist. Radiologists read X-ray images. They have to gather patient histories. They have to operate the machines, maintain the machines, consult with mentor younger doctors and so on. So radiologist is one example. Does many different tasks. So what I've seen businesses do, sometimes with our help, and also one of our friends, Eric Brynolfsson, was really pioneering this technique, is to look at your team, figure out of all of your employees, what are the tasks they're actually doing, and to analyze not at the job level, but at the task level, how amenable is this task to AI augmentation or automation, and what's the business ROI. And every time I've done this with a business, we've always come up with way more ideas than any of us have time to implement. So there's a lot of opportunities for AI augmentation or automation. And then the second thing I've learned is very often the highest ROI tasks are not what people initially think. So for example, when you think of a radiologist, people often think, oh, radiologists read X-rays. There's that picture in your head of that defining role of what a job entails. But when we actually break down that job into many different tasks, there are often other tasks like maybe gathering patient histories or something, that turns out to be easier and maybe higher ROI. So I found that doing this exercise systematically has often helped businesses identify valuable opportunities to then go through a build versus buy kind of decision to execute an AI project.
And this is exactly actually where I wanted to go next, which is bringing it very practical to the group here. So are there any commonalities of applications that you see among your work with Fortune 500 companies on applications that have clear, demonstrable, achievable ROI? Like what applications do you see that most in this room should be absolutely laser focused on?
Yeah, so if we look as broad as Fortune 500, I think the common ones are customer operations or customer support. There's so many companies trying to augment or automate customer support. I think software engineering is also transforming. So we have a lot of software engineers, and I think this goes well beyond GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot is a nice tool, but it goes well beyond that. I think sales operations is also being heavily impacted. But for specific businesses, it turns out kind of everyone is doing customer operations, so you should probably consider it as well. But the more exciting things to me are, what can I talk about? I was talking to a very large agriculture company, and there are some people that do some tasks. I can't talk about the details, but we identified the tasks that, it's not what you think of when they think of harvesting, right? It's this weird task that we thought, oh, maybe we could use AI to really save them a lot of time. So it's those niche, it's those things that are specific to your business and your industry that I think are often more interesting and creates that industry-specific defensible flywheel and strengthens, because everyone at some point will probably be able to buy some generic tools for sales operations and so on, but the things specific to your business, they should build internally. Those things actually I find very exciting.
One thing to just add to that is there's, the kind of like customer support or ops solutions, but there's also another way to look at it is where are the commonality and opportunities using the current technology. And I think it's still true today is where you have the most data, where the data can be, you can actually discern repeatable patterns or good patterns out of the data. And that's where you can start, whether it's human language patterns or it's structured data patterns or imagery patterns, where data is and where the patterns of data prove to be valuable and actionable in your business is where one should be looking at.
Let's talk about barriers that Fortune 500 CEOs may face. We held our healthcare summit this past Sunday with a number of healthcare CEOs, one of whom we asked, what are you most excited about for digital innovation? He said artificial intelligence. Then I asked him, well, what are you most concerned about as CEO? And he said inaccuracy.
And you picked the hardest industry. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to CEOs who are talking about inaccuracy as a CEO level concern in artificial intelligence? And are there other concerns that you also see at that level?
Well, this is where I was saying, right? Like it depends on your product, it depends on your services, it depends on the stakes of the outcome, right? Healthcare, driving, financial prediction. There are many industries where the long tail accuracy is so important. You cannot afford human lives or human injury. You cannot afford, banking errors. So this is where you need to understand your industry, you need to understand your solutions and services, and look at where AI genuinely can help. And this is where, when you call hype, personally, as when I have conversation with business executives, this is where we really should peel away from the hype and understand what this technology can do and avoid that kind of, investment or the kind of directions where AI is not ready.
So Fei-Fei, in an industry like healthcare, which is life and death and highly regulated, then what would you say to a company that wants to do generative AI but is concerned about inaccuracy? What would you say to him or her?
Well, both Andrew and I work in healthcare a lot. I personally work a lot in healthcare delivery. So there is actually a ton of AI usage in healthcare, just breaking it down from very upstream drug discovery. There's a ton we can do.
And I mean generative AI.
By the way, that is an overloaded word. Every AI today, people call it generative AI. When Andrew and I started, we have very specific mathematical definitions of generative AI, but now it's
we used to call it machine learning, but machine learning became AI.
Exactly. We also used to call generative versus discriminative AI, right? True, yeah. So that whole mathematical rigor is gone. So,
but I feel that the mass media has kind of taken over the tech terminology and made technologists just adopt the mass media.
So when you call generative AI, I'm just gonna assuming like that kind of large data driven. There's a pre-training phase, So some people might put transformer and predictive model in it, but I'm not even totally sure if people always do. But in any case, I think if there is a true accuracy issue, we should examine several things. Is this a model limitation? Is this a data quality problem? Is this the AI in the loop? There is more nuanced business issues that causes inaccuracy. Really decipher all those and try to tackle them. And sometimes, for example, in certain level of healthcare diagnosis and treatment, you do have to recognize there's a limit, and we cannot push too far if the risk is too high.
So let's turn to
just add to that. Even though we use the term generative AI is often used for analysis. So my teams have done a bunch of projects using these large language models to read electronic health records to try to spit out a conclusion rather than to write text. And even if you're writing text, it turns out that if you're careful, software for summarizing, is not that bad. It may still make some, and I think there's so many opportunities to deploy things even in a healthcare setting where the stakes aren't quite as high. So for diagnostics, if you miss something, that seems really bad. But we deployed a system that is still running in a hospital to screen patients reading electronic health records to try to decide who's at high risk of mortality to recommend them for consideration for palliative care, for end-of-life care. But we don't trust our system to make the decision, so we send it to a doctor that reviews the folders we show them and then makes a final decision. And actually, one of my friends in Singapore, Chong Yap Sang in National University of Singapore, has a system that's looking at patients' EHRs as they come in to try to estimate how long is a patient going to be in the hospital. Sometimes the doctor thinks, oh, this is a simple case, they'll be out in 3 days, but the AI says, no, 15 days, and that triggers a conversation. This is actually happening now in Singapore, where the clinician says, oh, maybe I need to take a second look at this patient, maybe I missed something that AI caught. So these things are actually getting deployed, but depending on the capabilities, we can often design safeguards to make sure that it's deployed in a responsible way. Oh, in healthcare operations, if you're using AI to schedule an MRI machine, if you make a mistake, fine, the use of the MRI is less efficient, that is bad, but that doesn't seem maybe as bad as missing a critical diagnosis. So there are actually a lot of opportunities to deploy in healthcare and I think pretty much all other sectors.
So let's jump to foundation models, and this next question was inspired by an article that I read in VentureBeat. If 2023 was the year of OpenAI, among the foundation model leaders, who will we be talking about most in 2024? Will Apple launch Ajax LLM? Will we be talking more about Gemini than about GPT?
So I just said earlier, I see this technology deepening and also widening into all sectors. And because of that, it is hard to single out one company. I'm sure there will be exciting releases. There will be, the next H100 next generation release from the chip side all the way to the consumer side. So I'm not going to be able to bet on a single topic, but I do think 2024. I hope to see, and I do believe, will be defined by a year that we are seeing the widening of AI applications as well as AI technology. And so it's not just focusing on one or two.
Andrew, how do you handicap the foundation model leaders for this year?
No, so let me it turns out that every time there's a wave of tech innovation, the media likes to talk about the technology layer, which is why the media focuses on OpenAI, Google, AWS, Microsoft, Meta, and so on. Nothing wrong with that. But it turns out, and NVIDIA and AMD and so on. But it turns out that for this technology infrastructure layer to be successful, there's another sector we need to be even more successful, and that's the application layer built on top of these two providers. Because frankly, we need the applications built on top of these tools to generate even more revenue so that they can afford to pay the two builders. I think Sequoia wrote a nice article showing, given the capital investments in GPUs, we better, right, collectively as a few, generate applications to fill in these tens of billions of dollars kinds of hole that we're now, with the capital investments that have already been made with GPUs. So I don't know what the media does. They the hype cycle is whatever it is, but I think a lot of the actual work will not just be the foundation model layer. It'll be going to healthcare, financial services, education, e-commerce, all of these different sectors to identify and execute the projects that are now possible.
Yeah, I grew up in tech and mobile, and in mobile, you had many multi-billion-dollar app companies get created, and I agree with you. I think there's going to be something here for that. Staying with foundation models for a moment, one of the major topics today is the lawsuits on generative AI and intellectual property. So, how do you see these lawsuits evolving, and should the New York Times be compensated for use of its content in training?
Do you want to take that?
you are the one on Twitter talking about it.
Yeah. I've already said some stuff that might get me into trouble, so I might as well. No, so I did look through the New York Times OpenAI Microsoft lawsuit. I'm not a lawyer, not giving legal advice or any form of advice for this. But my sympathies lie much more with OpenAI than with Microsoft. And my sympathies lie much more with OpenAI and Microsoft than with the New York Times. Candidly, when I read the New York Times lawsuit, I felt that it was a very muddied argument. And I wish New York Times lawyers were held to the same standards of clarity and journalistic, explaining stuff as the reporters are, but I don't think they are. So the New York Times did this very somewhat, I thought, sensationalist showing of, OpenAI, regurgitates New York Times articles, but I think the way it was presented was frankly a little bit strange.
How so? How so, Andrew? What did you find as a flaw in the arguments in that brief?
So two things. One, and maybe more important, is the prompts. What you type in to get it to regurgitate New York Times articles. That was a very strange prompt that I don't think pretty much any normal user of OpenAI will ever use. So I think it is true that New York Times found, OpenAI characterizes as bugs. I think New York Times found a bug in which OpenAI does regurgitate articles, which it should not do. I don't think regurgitating chiropractic content at scale is appropriate. So OpenAI has a bug where it does that. And New York Times just points out, kind of says, you have a bug, you have a bug, you have a bug. And yes, OpenAI has a bug. We all, sadly, sometimes have bugs in the software. And I think there was another thing that was strange, which was, I believe that in some of the examples, New York Times showed that you can write a prompt, prompt ChatGPT, to tell it to basically go and download a New York Times article and then tell it to print it out. And I feel like just because it does that is not the same as the fact that OpenAI trained on a lot of text data from the internet, including New York Times article. And I think the lawsuit tried to draw a link between OpenAI training on a lot of text that includes New York Times articles with this, specter that OpenAI is engaging in mass regurgitation of New York Times text, which I don't think is really telling the full story.
Andrew, you should expect a call from the district attorney's office. let me add to this, not specifically the New York Times.
Meaning Andrew will be an expert witness.
I'd rather not.
Yeah. That's my 2024 prediction. I'm just kidding. So I do want to add to this and zoom out a little bit about the tension between Gen AI and creator economy. And I'm not as nuanced as Andrew about the specifics of New York Times dispute, but even in my book, I'm mentioning about the messiness of this technology. Those of us who trained in the technology itself love to see deterministic, even in probability theory, it's mathematically rigorous things. But the truth is when rubber hits the road, especially a technology as profound as this, it gets messy with the human world, human society. What New York Times lawsuit with OAI and Microsoft is really showing us is indicative of the tension we're seeing between creator economy, which is the internet has really scaled creator economy. And this impacts not only big players like New York Times, but little players like a single artist, a photographer, a music composer. And that whole ecosystem is being challenged, disrupted, as well as augmented by today's generative AI technology. And we're seeing that tension playing out. In addition to the New York Times lawsuit, we're getting artists engaged in lawsuits with Midjourney and others. So I actually think, especially Andrew has been calling out media, and I do plead to the media to look into this with a much more nuanced lens. And whether it's public sector or private sector, we should pay much deeper attention in this issue than just scratching the surface.
Yeah, and there is a very human element to this. So during the Hollywood strikes, a lot of the difficulties was just, boy, if you're a creator and you think, is my job going to go away? Is all my work going to be stolen? It is a very deeply emotional thing. I actually do sympathize with that. I think that the fears of job loss are probably greater than they will be because of what we said earlier, the jobs are made out of tasks, and even artists' jobs are made out of many tasks. And yes, AI could automate some of the tasks, but because AI may automate, 20, 30% of someone's tasks, but that's still a lot of other tasks that we need people to do, and maybe they could be more efficient and actually even make more money. But there is this fear that I think is challenging. I think the AI world probably needs to do a better job having that conversation and reassuring people that the job losses, I don't say there'll be no job losses, that's just not true, but I think it won't be as bad as is feared.
Let me jump back to the group again here, and again, show of hands, 3 options. All internet content should be available for training, not inference, but for training. Some content categories, some content provider categories should be compensated for their content for training, and then many or most content providers should be paid for their content for training. How many folks feel that all internet content should be available for free for training?
You just go, open internet, right?
Open internet. All open internet. How many folks feel, let's say open internet. How many folks feel like all open internet content should be available for training? And there's kind of an interesting argument here. You know, I mean, the University of Michigan quarterback might have watched Todd Brady, but he probably didn't pay Todd Brady for yesterday's performance. Okay, how many folks feel like some content providers, some categories of content providers should be paid for their content for training on models like OpenAI and others? How many folks feel like many or most content providers on the open internet should be paid? So maybe like 30, 40, maybe 30, 50, 10, 30, 50, 20, something like that.
I'm sure this is how the law is made.
Yeah, and by the way, just here, I think, you know, copyright law was written in a previous era. I think it needs to be cleaned up for the generative AI era. And there are these difficult questions about what is best for society, right? U.S. government collectively as a society, we can pass whatever laws we want. And I think these are very difficult debates about how do we compensate creators fairly and also enable tech innovation, and what does the open internet mean, and do we want it to be a little bit less open than it has been? These are actually really difficult questions about what's best for society.
Awesome. We're going to do a lightning round for this last 4 minutes. So true or false, and then 30 seconds why. Maybe Andrew, I'll start with you. Open source LLMs will reach the level of the best closed source LLMs within the next 3 years.
Don't know, but it might. There's a lot of momentum. It'll certainly beat today's closed source LLMs, but the race is on. We'll see what happens with closed source versus open source.
I'm going to say it's false, not because of the discrepancy of quality, it's because of the divergence of the kind of models, because of the data are very different, and the closed source will pivot much more to deepened business cases, and the open source will be different. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
True or false? AI-generated election disinformation will be everywhere, but it will not shift the outcome of the 2024 election.
Why don't you take that?
More or less true. And the reason I'm saying this, and I'm part of the effort, so I'm trying to believe in this, is the strength of democracy is not relied on technology itself. And the flip side is true, the weakness of democracy. The strength and weakness of a democracy is on its people. And if we do the right public education and have the right public discourse, we are stronger than we believe we are.
Yeah. I don't know. It's tough. I think until now, I think the bottleneck.
True or false, Andrew? True or false?
I think it's probably false, but I'm not sure because until now, the bottleneck for dissemination of falsehoods, disinformation, has been distribution. People can write fake stuff. It's really difficult to get that fake stuff in front of a large audience. I think the risk is personalized disinformation and persuasion. But the technology is early, and the building up of defenses is also still early.
A deeply technical topic. Transformers are hitting a wall, and we need a new solution, such as subquadratic architectures or liquid neural networks.
liquid neural networks. Well, coming from the pixel world, which is deeply non-1D, it's 2D, it's 3D, it's multi-dimensional, I do think we need breakthrough technology beyond sequence-to-sequence models. That I absolutely believe. So I guess it's true.
True-ish. Andrew?
I say transformers are not hitting a wall. If all we have is transformers for the next 5 years, we still have tons of room. And we also need new breakthroughs, because I wish we had something much better than transformers.
Andrew, the next one is for you as managing general partner of the AI fund. And Fei-Fei totally opine as well. I would invest in OpenAI at a $100 billion valuation.
Yeah, no comment. OpenAI is a great company. OpenAI is a great company. Sam was my student at Stanford. Really deep respect for OpenAI, but no comment on investment decisions.
Sorry.
I'm too poor to invest.
Well, that may be not 100% true. Fei-Fei, question, true, false? There is an existential threat to humanity from AI.
Not now. There is catastrophic social risks, from democracy to data bias issue, algorithm bias issues, to job labor market shift. These are true societal risks, but not the kind of conscious sentient being existential crisis. Not now.
Andrew, last one is for you. This is from Ivan Gaviria from Gunderson Detmer. True or false? At least, as a venture capitalist, at least one AI startup will raise a substantial round of financing before investors realize that the company contains no actual humans and the founder is a bot.
Not this year, not for a while.
Everybody, please join me in thanking Fei-Fei Li and Andrew Ng.